She was dragged out of her own house barefoot in front of her 8-year-old twins. The cuffs were too tight, the neighbor was filming, and the arresting officer kept calling her ma'am while slamming her against the car. The charge? Identity theft for trying to cash a check from her own business account. 30 minutes later, the branch manager claimed he never saw her before in his life. Subscribe and tell us where you're watching us from. Kendra Lane had opened the business account herself, signed every document, provided tax forms, IDs, corporate filings, and startup capital. It was her name on every page. The branch manager had even shaken her hand. That was 6 months ago. Now she stood inside the exact same bank, same floor tiles, same quiet jazz, same glass windows, holding a cashier's check made out to Lane Learning, LLC. Behind the desk, a teller squinted at the screen. "Ma'am, this account has a hold." Kendra raised an eyebrow. "A hold for what?" "This is a deposit from a school district. It cleared yesterday." The teller hesitated. "I need to speak with Mr. Kane." "Of course." "Mr. Kane." Kendra stepped aside as the teller disappeared through the side door. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, a reminder to pick up her twins in 37 minutes. She glanced outside. A patrol car had just pulled into the parking lot. 5 minutes passed. Then 7. She stepped back up to the counter. "Excuse me, is there a problem?" Mr. Kane finally emerged. Navy blazer, tan face, thin smile. "Ms. Lane," he said, voice too loud, "can I speak with you in my office?" Kendra hesitated. "About what?" "Just a verification matter. Please." She followed him down the hallway. Once inside, he closed the door and locked it. That's when she noticed the officer standing in the corner. "Ma'am," the officer said, "we've had a report that this check was obtained fraudulently." Kendra's mouth dropped open. "It's from the Pittsburgh City Schools. They're our client. I run a tutoring company." The officer didn't move. Mr. Kane cleared his throat. "We've had multiple fraud attempts from individuals using similar documents." "Similar to what?" she demanded. "This is my business. That's my EIN on the back." "Ma'am, please calm down." "I am calm." The officer took a step forward. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to stand." Kendra stood, but she didn't understand. Not even when they turned her around. Not even when the cuffs clicked. Not even when they walked her out through the lobby, where 2 more officers waited, and not a single employee said a word. Outside, people stared. Her car still running. Her purse still on the desk. The twins' backpacks in the back seat. Her name on the glass door. And the man who said he never saw her before? He was the one who had approved her account. The one who sent her a holiday card 2 weeks ago. But today? Today, he just looked at the floor. The holding cell smelled like bleach and metal. Kendra sat on the bench, arms crossed, shoeless. Her feet were freezing. They had taken her purse, her phone, even her earrings. The woman across from her, curled in the corner, hadn't said a word since Kendra arrived. An officer opened the door. "Lane, let's go." She stood. Down the hallway, fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The officer didn't speak, just opened the door to the booking room. Inside, a younger cop sat at the desk. He flipped through a file and barely looked up. "You're being processed for attempted fraud, identity theft, and obstruction." "Obstruction of what?" Kendra asked. He didn't answer. They took her fingerprints, snapped her photo, made her sign a form she wasn't allowed to read fully. "Where are my kids?" she asked. No one responded. By the time she was placed back in the cell, it was past 5:30. Her twins had likely been sitting outside the elementary school for nearly 2 hours. She clenched her fists. An hour later, they brought her to interrogation. This time, no lawyers, no explanations. Just Mr. Kane, sitting on the other side of the glass. "You," Kendra said. "What is this?" He shrugged. "I'm here as a witness. You're the one who opened the account." "I don't recall that. You sent me a Christmas card. That doesn't prove anything." Kendra narrowed her eyes. "This is about me being black, isn't it?" Kane raised his eyebrows, pretending offense. "Ma'am, we've had a spike in account fraud. We treat every case the same, except I'm the only one in cuffs. That's not my decision. But you called the police." He didn't deny it. He just looked at the officer beside him, who nodded once. Then they stood and left. The door locked behind them. Kendra sat alone. A camera watched her from the corner. The clock ticked. No charges were filed that night. No attorney arrived. At 1:03 a.m., they moved her to a different cell. No explanation. At 4:17 a.m., she was fingerprinted again. At 6:45, they gave her a cheese sandwich and warm milk. At 9 o'clock, they told her she'd be transferred to county. But at 9:41, everything changed. A new officer entered the room with a tablet in his hand. He looked nervous. Kendra Lane. Yes. Your attorney's here. I don't have one. The officer swallowed. You do now. He's with corporate counsel. For the bank. Kendra stared. For the bank. The officer nodded. He says you should see something. He handed her the tablet. On the screen was a surveillance video. And in it? Kendra. At the bank. Shaking Kane's hand. Signing her name. Laughing. 6 months ago. And in the corner, the timestamp and camera ID. From their own system. The video kept playing. Another angle. Another date. Kendra walking into the branch with a folder of business documents. Sitting at Kane's desk. Handing over her ID. Another clip. Kane smiling as he typed into the system. Nodding. Printing paperwork. Each frame built the timeline. Each clip destroyed the lie. The officer holding the tablet shifted. He says you'll be released soon. Kendra blinked. No apology? He didn't say that. She handed the tablet back. Her hands were shaking, but her face wasn't. When? The officer looked at the door. They're finalizing paperwork. Kendra didn't ask what that meant. She had already learned. Every delay was an erasure. Every stall bought someone more distance from responsibility. At 10:22 a.m., she was given back her shoes. No phone. No purse. No charges. Just a white envelope with a property receipt and a release form. The officer at the desk didn't look at her when she signed. Outside, the air felt too loud. Kendra shielded her eyes. Across the parking lot stood a woman in scrubs, her neighbor, Cynthia, holding the twins by each hand. They ran. Kendra knelt, pulling them into her arms. They didn't cry. They just held her. Cynthia approached quietly. They waited 3 hours yesterday. I picked them up and kept them at my place. Kendra nodded. Thank you. They told me what happened. Kendra stood, holding her son's backpacks. They saw it. They're okay. But they're asking questions. She didn't answer that. What was she supposed to say? At home, the front door still hung open. The officers hadn't closed it after the arrest. Inside, the carpet was wet from yesterday's storm. Her laptop sat on the floor beside the coffee table. Still open. Her email inbox filled with unread messages, school districts, parents, invoices, lesson plans. Life didn't pause. Only people did. She changed clothes. Sat at the kitchen table. Opened her laptop. The first thing she did wasn't check work. It was logging into the bank's business portal. The screen blinked. Access restricted. Contact your branch manager. She closed the tab. Opened another. Typed the name of a lawyer she once helped tutor back in college. Left a message. Then she opened a spreadsheet and began listing every transaction, every meeting, every statement tied to her business account. It wasn't rage. It was evidence. By nightfall, she had 3 folders, one for her lawyer, one for the state board, and one marked internal, keep. Because Kendra Lane didn't plan to go public. She planned to go permanent. And someone was going to lose a license. Kane didn't answer her email. Not the first. Not the second. Not the third, where she attached proof of account creation, including his signature and branch stamp. Instead, she got a system message, please direct all inquiries to our legal department. By the following morning, Kendra's online access was locked completely. She checked from her phone. From her neighbor's laptop. Same message. Account under review. No explanation. At 11:14 a.m., her phone rang. Unknown number. This is Dana Gilliam, said a woman on the line. I represent First North Bank's internal compliance office. Kendra stepped onto the back porch. Go ahead. We've been made aware of your complaint. Kendra said nothing. Dana continued, Mr. Kane has submitted a report indicating procedural irregularities during your application process. Kendra laughed once. He filed a complaint against me? Against the circumstances, Dana clarified. And I was arrested for those circumstances? A pause. We understand there may have been a misunderstanding. No. A misunderstanding is when you forget someone's name. This was a felony arrest. Again, we're investigating. Kendra exhaled slowly. Good. Because so am I. She hung up. That evening, her lawyer called. Looks like they're preparing a defense, he said. Probably claim a glitch in the system. Kane lied under oath. Then we prove it. Kendra opened her notes. I want his certification revoked. We can file that. But if you want real leverage, we push for civil damages. I'm not doing this for money. The lawyer paused. I know. But they are. 3 days later, she filed formal complaints with the State Banking Board, the Consumer Finance Bureau, and the Bar Association, naming Mr. Kane, the officers involved, and the branch manager above him. Within hours, her phone rang again. Same woman. Dana Gilliam. Ms. Lane, we've reviewed the footage. It does show your initial account setup. And there may have been a clerical error in record consolidation. Kendra's voice was ice. Someone put me in handcuffs in front of my children. That's not a clerical error. We understand your frustration. No, you don't. Ms. Lane, we'd like to offer a meeting with our executive review panel. I don't meet. I file. And next week, I testify. She ended the call, then went back to work. Each evening, she taught her students remotely. Each morning, she built her case. The story wasn't public yet. No cameras. No interviews. But the emails had begun to change. From silence to stalling. From stalling to offers. From offers to legal threats. Then came the envelope. No name. No return address. Inside was a copy of her original account application, stamped, signed, time-stamped, with a sticky note that read, he knew. Kane still hadn't answered. But he would, because Kendra wasn't waiting for him anymore. She was writing the ending herself. It started with a phone call Kendra wasn't supposed to get. A low voice. No caller ID. They're going to try to discredit you. Quietly. Personal history, financials, anything they can spin. Who is this? Pause. Doesn't matter. But you should know, Kane's records were flagged before this. Twice. Kendra's breath caught. Flagged by who? Internal audit team. But the reports were buried. The line went dead. She stared at the screen. No trace. No message. Just silence. That same day, her lawyer called again. You've got movement. They're offering to reinstate your business account. Full access. Clean balance. Kendra sat at her desk, staring at the envelope from the night before. The sticky note. The stamped form. Why now? Because someone inside is talking. I want written confirmation of liability. They won't give that. Then no. The lawyer hesitated. They'll see that as escalation. Kendra's voice didn't change. Good. By Friday, her students noticed the difference. She was sharper, quieter, more deliberate. Even the twins had started asking questions she didn't know how to answer. Are they going to arrest you again? No, she told them. But inside, she wasn't sure. The pressure wasn't gone. It had just changed shape. Late that evening, she drove past the branch. Lights off. Lobby empty. A sign in the window. Closed for system maintenance. She parked across the street. Watched. At 9:42 p.m., a man in uniform exited through the side door. Kane. No briefcase. No files. Just a phone in his hand and a tight jaw. He got into a black sedan and drove off. Kendra didn't follow. She just noted the plate, the time, the direction. At home, she pulled out a sheet of paper. Handwritten. From memory. Timeline. Faces. Statements. She wasn't guessing anymore. She was preparing. That weekend, a certified letter arrived. From the bank's legal team. We are aware of your recent filings. Any continued accusations made publicly will be met with appropriate legal response. Kendra smiled. They were scared. Not of headlines. Of exposure. She scanned the letter. Filed it under threats. Then went back to work. New folder. New tab. She didn't need the system to validate her anymore. They had already done that by trying to erase her. On Monday, she received a call from the local investigative office. A complaint had reached their desk, officially, and they wanted to meet. She didn't ask who filed it. She already knew. And this time, she'd bring everything. Because the next meeting wouldn't be about defense. It would be about consequences. The meeting took place in a low-rise government building with peeling paint and a cracked sidewalk. No cameras. No badge scanners. Just a clipboard, a metal detector, and a waiting room with 3 chairs. Kendra arrived 10 minutes early. A woman in slacks and a loose cardigan introduced herself as Investigator Hensley. No handshake. Just eye contact. They entered a small room with a round table. I'm not here on behalf of the police, Hensley said. This is a civil inquiry. Banking misconduct, misuse of identification, and potential abuse of authority. Kendra opened her bag. Inside were 3 folders, 1 flash drive, and a printed log of every call she'd received since the arrest. She placed them on the table. Hensley raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. For 2 hours, Kendra walked her through the timeline. The check, the arrest, the video, the denial, the threats. She read emails aloud, showed Kane's signature side by side with the stamped application, played the surveillance footage from the original branch meeting. Not once did Hensley interrupt. When Kendra finished, the investigator nodded. You've built a stronger file than some internal teams I've worked with. Kendra didn't smile. I didn't have the luxury of forgetting. That afternoon, Kane called her for the first time. Unknown number. She let it ring. Then he texted, "We need to talk." She didn't respond. 30 minutes later, a new email arrived. Legal address. No subject. In the body, "We'd like to resolve this quietly. Please name your terms." She didn't respond to that either. Instead, she contacted her lawyer. "They're folding," he said. "They want confidentiality." "Of course they do. You're in a strong position. I don't want to check." "You want a name?" "Yes." That night, she drafted a formal response. No settlement. No sealed records. No dropped complaints. She would only meet under subpoena or public record. At 7:31 p.m., her lawyer hit send. The next morning, her inbox was flooded. Apologies. Clarifications. Internal miscommunications. None of them came from Kane, but one came from a regional director. He requested a formal in-person apology on behalf of the institution. Kendra read the message twice, then deleted it. She wasn't interested in a stage-managed apology. She wanted accountability. That afternoon, she received a second email from the same director. Attached was a letter of resignation. Kane's. Effective immediately. No comment. No admission. But enough. She printed it, filed it with the rest, and then she went to bed early for the first time in weeks. Because morning would bring something new. The silence of those who once ignored her, and the noise of a system that had finally, if only slightly, been forced to shift. Kendra woke up early the next day. The sun hadn't fully risen, but the inbox was already waiting. A dozen more emails. Some from people she'd never heard of: regional managers, HR coordinators, private attorneys. They all said the same thing in slightly different ways. "We're sorry." But not one of them asked her what she needed. Not one of them acknowledged the twins. Not one of them mentioned the fact that her fingerprint record still existed in a system where it never belonged. She brewed coffee slowly, watched the street outside her window. Her neighbor walked by with a stroller. The mail truck pulled in down the block. The world had moved on, but Kendra hadn't. She pulled out her notebook and added a new section. Aftermath. She listed every name from every message, every department, every subject line. She color-coded each one: apology, threat, offer, silence. Then she picked up the phone and called investigator Hensley. "I'm not done," she said. Hensley paused. "What do you mean?" "I mean there's more. I have students, families, other women who bank there." Hensley said nothing for a moment. Then, "Send everything." Kendra opened her folders. There would be no forgetting. Not this time. The threats didn't come with warnings. They came quietly. First, her tutoring platform glitched. Her calendar disappeared. Then her payment processor froze a transaction, pending compliance review. Kendra knew what it was. Not coincidence. Not random. Pressure. Her lawyer confirmed it. They're pushing back. Not directly, they can't. But they're testing what they can shake. How do I respond? You don't. You document. So she did. Screenshots. Logs. Names. Dates. At 2:13 p.m., a new student's parent canceled with no explanation. Then another. One more email simply read, "Too risky." She didn't panic, but she didn't dismiss it either. The next day, a black SUV idled outside her house for over 20 minutes. Engine running. Windows tinted. No one knocked. No one spoke. But they wanted her to see, to notice. That night, Kendra received an anonymous envelope. No return address. Inside were printouts, old traffic citations, a college dorm incident from 15 years ago, even a grainy photo of her walking into a grocery store. She laid them out on the kitchen table. Sloppy intimidation. She could feel the message: "We see you. We remember everything." But they had made one mistake. So did she. She remembered everything, too. She added the envelope to her file and typed a new entry: "Escalation attempts, unsourced." Then she wrote one sentence beneath it: "They're not ready for someone who writes it all down." That weekend, her oldest twin had nightmares. Woke up crying. Said someone was watching the house. Kendra sat up with him all night, holding his hand, pretending not to feel the same thing. By Monday, her story had finally leaked. Not by her, but someone on the investigative team. A legal blog posted a short piece: Community educator falsely detained over bank check. Internal review underway. No names. No details. But enough. Enough to shake the walls. Her phone lit up. Journalists. Advocates. Podcast hosts. Documentarians. She didn't answer a single one. At 4:07 p.m., Kane's name trended locally. A retired employee from the bank commented anonymously under the article. He's done this before. But this time he picked the wrong one. Kendra saw it. Didn't save it. She didn't have to. Because everything was already in the record. Not in the news. In the folder. In the statements. In the truth they tried to suppress. And now? The walls were cracking. And they couldn't stop what they started. The email came from a private address. Subject. You didn't hear this from me. It was short. 2 sentences. There's a second video. Internal camera. Kane had it removed from the archive. Kendra stared at the screen. Then clicked reply. The message bounced. Address not found. She read it again. A second video. She called her lawyer. Send a demand letter, she said. Full archive access. Internal footage, not just lobby. They'll claim it's privileged. Then we file a motion. The next morning, the bank responded, not with footage, but with a statement. We have reviewed all relevant surveillance and found no new material. But Kendra knew what that meant. They didn't deny it existed. They denied it was relevant. Different game. She went back through her old records, every log from that day, every frame of footage she had. Something was missing. Between the lobby footage and the conference room, there was a gap. 27 seconds unaccounted for. A camera angle that should have shown the hallway. But that feed had never been included in the evidence package. She checked timestamps. They didn't align. She documented the difference. Labeled it Internal Concealment A. At 2:43 p.m., Hensley called. I got your note. I've requested access from internal tech. What did they say? They're stalling. Claim it's in review. Can I submit my copy? You can. But unless we find the missing clip, it's not conclusive. I'll find it. Later that evening, her lawyer texted a name. Check Harold Klein. Former IT contractor. Quiet guy. Left 6 weeks before your arrest. Kendra searched. Nothing online. No LinkedIn. No contacts. But she found a comment thread, old employee forum. Someone posted a message. Props to Harold. You saved the rollout. She clicked the profile. One photo. Same man in the background of an office selfie, badge on his hip, USB drive in hand. She zoomed in. USB brand. Model number. She called the manufacturer. Asked about serial batch tracking. It took 2 hours and one favor from an old contact, but they gave her a list of companies who'd ordered that model during the last quarter. One was First North Bank. She sent the model and date range to Hensley. The next day, Hensley replied with one line. Found it. Encrypted. Not deleted. Kendra's breath caught. Can you access it? We're working on it. A pause. But this is big. Kendra closed her laptop. She looked at the folder on her desk. She had written truth. She had spoken truth. But this? This was proof. They cracked the encryption at 4:12 p.m. on a Tuesday. Hensley called immediately. No voicemail. Just a single line. You need to come in. Kendra didn't ask what was on the footage. She already knew. At the office, Hensley didn't speak at first. Just pulled up the file. The internal hallway camera. No audio. Just motion. Kendra watched as Kane escorted her into the conference room. His face tight. His gestures sharp. Then the crucial moment. He picked up the phone. Paused. Looked directly at the camera. Then turned it physically with his hand until the lens pointed at the ceiling. Timestamp. 11:06 and 48 seconds a.m. 9 full minutes before officers entered the bank. The rest of the clip showed nothing. Just acoustic panels and overhead lights. But that one motion, that one deliberate act, said everything. He knew what he was doing. He planned it. He didn't want it recorded. Hensley exhaled. I can't ignore that. Kendra nodded. Neither can I. By Thursday, the footage was submitted with a revised misconduct file. New language. New charges. Obstruction. Destruction of evidence. Malicious intent. Her attorney filed for full release of all internal memos related to the case. Subpoenas followed. Someone else, they didn't say who, resigned from the legal team. Her phone didn't stop ringing. But this time, no reporters. Lawyers. Agencies. Civil rights groups. They wanted to meet. Kendra kept saying the same thing. I'll talk when it's public. She wasn't settling. Not anymore. That weekend, She met with two women who had stories just like hers. One was denied a loan despite perfect credit. Another was removed from her own account for security review after depositing a settlement check. Same bank, same location, same manager. They cried together. But not for long. They built a timeline. A shared list of calls, dates, denials. One woman added something new. There's a fourth. Kendra wrote it down. The circle was growing. And the pressure? It wasn't on her anymore. It was on them. For the first time since the arrest, Kendra slept through the night. No texts. No engines idling. No threats. Just rest. Because the next part of the fight would need it. The hearing wasn't public. Not yet. It took place in a private chamber inside the state regulatory office. No cameras. No audience. Just 3 panelists, 2 attorneys, and Kendra. She didn't bring a speech. She brought her folders. Laid them on the table. One by one. Exhibit A, the arrest report with false charges. Exhibit B, the video of the account creation. Exhibit C, the concealed footage Kane tried to erase. Exhibit D, the resignation letter. Exhibit E, 3 additional testimonies. All different names. Same story. She didn't raise her voice. Didn't shake. Didn't pause. Because the facts didn't need dramatics. They just needed daylight. The panelists asked questions. Some hard. Some gentle. She answered all of them. After 2 hours, one of them leaned back and said, "It's not a matter of if this was wrong. It's how many people knew and let it happen anyway." Kendra closed her last folder. "I'm not here to clean up their mess," she said. "I'm here to make sure no one else gets buried by it." When she stepped outside, the sky was gray. A reporter waited by the curb. "Ms. Lane, do you have a statement?" She looked straight ahead. No comment. The next day, the panel issued its ruling. Kane was formally banned from working in finance. The bank was fined. Her record was wiped. Her fingerprint data purged. But none of that made her smile. Because none of that undid what her sons had seen. What she'd lived. What others still lived. What had almost been normal. That night, she sat with them at the kitchen table. They were doing homework. One of them looked up and asked, "Mom, what does justice mean?" She looked at them for a long time, then answered, "It means telling the truth, even when nobody believes you." The next morning, she reopened her tutoring schedule. By noon, 7 new clients had booked. She didn't say no. She didn't explain. She just showed up. Because the only thing stronger than what they tried to take was what she decided to build anyway. She didn't celebrate. There was no dinner. No champagne. No text to friends. She just folded the folders back into her case, locked it, and placed it in the drawer where she kept the twins' birth certificates. She stared at that drawer for a long time. Because what was protected now had nearly been erased. The doorbell rang once. It was her neighbor, Cynthia, holding a small container. "I made something," she said. "I don't know what to say, but Kendra smiled gently. "You don't have to." They stood in the doorway for a few quiet seconds. Then Cynthia added, "You did it. Most people wouldn't have." Kendra shook her head. "No, I'm just one of the few who didn't stop." Later that night, she sat in the backyard, watching the porch light flicker. The twins were asleep. The emails had stopped. The pressure was gone. But the memory wasn't. She thought of the hand on her wrist, the click of the cuffs, the silence of the lobby, and the man who looked away when she screamed for answers. He'd lost his job. She'd nearly lost everything else. But she was still here. And tomorrow, she'd start something new. Not a lawsuit. Not a speech. Something small. Quiet. Permanent. A checklist for every woman who walked into a bank and got treated like a question mark. She'd teach them what to carry, what to record, what to write down. Because justice wasn't guaranteed. But preparation? That was power. Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories that inspire action and hope.